As we promised you earlier, we have Tim Brent's Tai Chi master with us in the studio for the first of a somewhat continuing series, not only on Tai Chi, but other movement therapies or movement exercises or philosophizing about life or a whole lot of things. And we want to welcome John Cooke to our studio. And John, just for a beginning, why don't you tell us something about your background?
Well, thank you. I teach the Tai Chi in Bowling Green, Ohio, and the Attention Center movement, as you mentioned. And I did my undergraduate work at Bowling Green and also was a graduate of Tai Chi Health Academy out of Toledo. And my Tai Chi master and instructor was Pak Sung Woo from Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Shanghai before that. And I studied with him for a number of years, and he now lives in California and has his program there. He's the sixth generation of Tai Chi masters in the family that I come from, Tai Chi family that I come from. I became interested in movement.
Excuse me, let me clarify how you said that. He is, okay, in the Tai Chi family, so he is the sixth generation in his family, and now that you are his descendant, you are a member of that Tai Chi family.
Right.
Okay.
This is very important in the Tai Chi tradition, is to have a long, traceable heritage in which, like, as we know, longevity and ancestral background is very important in Chinese culture. So having some kind of sense of longevity and continuation in time is extremely important. It's very highly valued and respected. I became interested in movement out of a spontaneous occurrence that happened when I was 8. I was out hunting butterflies. At that time, hunting butterflies and insect collecting was a part of the curriculum of the school that I went to in Troy, Ohio. And I was helping my brothers and sisters make their collection. They were sophomores in high school. And as I said, I was 8, and I was up hunting butterflies, and I had this large butterfly net, and we were catching black swallowtails, and it was a beautiful spring day with that speckly light that the small leaves of the trees allow through on the floor of the forest. And as I was swinging at these butterflies with my net, I was going in these figure-8 motions and these circular motions, which are the basic movements in all Kung Fu movements. It's the circular and figure-8 motion. I was making these circular motions with my net like this, chasing these butterflies and watching them very effectively. And through no known reason of my own, I popped into a very desirable altered state of consciousness in which everything became silent around me and everything took on a very golden hue and haze, and I moved into a timeless spot. And when I moved into this timeless spot, my body movements became much more adept. I became very clear and precise in my motion, and I felt a great sense of competency come over me. And I thought to myself, many thoughts poured into my mind, and feelings about what it was to be human and what it was to be a person. And I began to sense a powerful, unknown quality that was available to all people. And I began to sense that people had something within them that already had competency without training. There was some kind of bodily knowledge inside them that could bring about jumps in performance that were outside of any kind of experience. I thought to myself, well, who is this 8-year-old person moving with such confidence and such clarity? And my brothers and sisters were over 15 feet away from me, and I thought another thought that came to me was like, aha, they can't tell. I live a personal life. I live a first-person life. I live a life that only I can tell about. And this experience, I didn't say anything to them, but this experience was the beginning of a series of experiences that I had over the years, up until I was in college.
Let me interrupt you. When you said, aha, this is a first-person life, was that a good feeling? Or was it an isolated feeling?
No, it was a very good feeling because it came along with a great sense of competency. The sense of my firmness in my step, and the sense of the clarity in my motion, and the whole sense of having a profound and yet unknown, but even in its unknownness, a supportive knowledge behind me. So I didn't feel that sense of being isolated off. If anything, I felt just the opposite, a sense of connectedness with all the people who had bodies that were shaped in the same way as my own.
Okay.
Of course, now I'm intellectualizing as an adult, but at that time I had very clear, mature thoughts that came along with what was happening. Many questions poured into my mind that were again, appropriate for a person, not just for a child. I kept this to myself. I had an experience earlier when I was about 3 in which I had fell into a swoon and my forehead rolled back, and I experienced, I guess what would be called in literature, something in the order of angels, or some kind of beings that were golden beings in some form.
And when you said your forehead rolled back, do you mean your head dropped back, or do you mean something else?
I mean that, as reported in many different forms of literature, that the sense of where your forehead is at, as you are sitting now watching the TV at this moment, if you think of where your forehead is at, just above your eyes, you think of the impressions that are coming out of that area. If all of a sudden that area would seem to open up, now I would say more than likely it appears to be closed off, or as if nothing's there.
Now, is that like the third eye?
I know what the third eye concept is. It may be something similar to that.
Okay.
I think. things that are outside of the usual language are very difficult to express. I think it's analogous to the feathered headdresses of the American Indians, the head bonnets. It's analogous to the Pope's crown that hat that he wears in his official areas. It has that same kind of configuration of a flame-like opening and coolness. It's accompanied, although I've only had this happen in my life, a few moments, just a moment is plenty.
It lasts a long time.
Right, it's so very distinct, it's so very clear that just a moment is quite sufficient to fuel your thought. But one of the things that accompanies it is a cooling of the forehead. Stanley Kellerman, who is a somatic therapist in San Francisco, refers to that feeling as the idea of containment of the brain. So the brain is contained appropriately. The opposite of containment of the brain would be the idea of a hot head.
Oh, uh-huh.
The opposite of containment of the brain would be the idea of a hot head.
Oh, uh-huh, okay.
Okay? When things aren't contained well, then there's too much fluid, and the fluids in the brain are overwhelmed.
Is that a metaphor you're using?
No, I'm talking about this would be physiological fact. There's more to it than just being metaphor, even though metaphor oftentimes helps us describe that which is outside of our usual and commonplace language. Many events that happen in life are beyond the normal language, especially English. Every language has its own particular type focus, and English is very suited for describing things and objects and not very good at describing intimate experiences. So there's some problems with language itself.
So if it's not metaphor, what is he saying again?
Well, he's suggesting that the environment of the brain itself, or the balance of the pressures and fluids and hormonal balance in the brain is is the result of the diaphragms and pumps that go out through our entire body. Reversals that I think Tim had showed you is using the arm and then the elbow and the wrist to delineate the joints. This is an excellent way to start. The nice thing about it is you don't have to have much thought process. Something you can do without verbalizing. When you do this motion here with the shoulder, let the ear stay on the shoulder and carry it over, and then open up to allow the side to open up a great deal more. He also showed you twisting with the leg. Many people have knee problems, and a lot of that comes from that the hips have lost their mobility. This kind of exercise can also be done on the edge of the bed. While you're sitting, before you even get up to go down and make the coffee or go to the bathroom, the very first thing in the morning you can sit over and swing your legs over and work with your joints. Another good thing to do in the morning is a spinal awareness maneuver. I'm going to turn sideways slightly so you can see what I'm speaking of here. Turn the head, turn it back, and then turn the head and shoulder. Turn the head back and over. Head, shoulder, back, around. Leave the hip back. Hip, shoulder, head. Head, shoulder, hip. Hip, shoulder, head. Now this can be combined with using the eyes in unusual ways. So let's say you're starting out, your eyes are straight ahead. You turn your head, your eyes are still straight ahead. Turn back. Turn your eyes over to the side. And then follow the eyes over and back. Follow the face, shoulder, back, turn, look back here with the eyes. Back here with the eyes. So to use your eyes in unusual combinations has a very powerful effect upon opening up your nervous system. Swing around. Show you how that looks from the rear. Turn, turn, look, turn, back, around, back, turn, look, back, turn, around. Now, if you've been doing that, I would recommend, again, doing it on, like we almost always do, working from one side only to begin with. This side, my left side, now feels like it's sticking out about 6 inches farther than my right side. My spine is very clear to me. My left leg feels like it's over to the side of it. It's opening up. I'm not quite as compacted. I'm genuinely expanding my awareness of myself. The weight has a tendency to be on the left side now. My tongue is slid over towards the left. It wants to be over there. Now we can balance that out. Turn, down, back, over, here. Back. Good twisting motion like that gives us a good way to start the day, feeling the spine and feeling this tubular quality of ourselves. We're kind of like erect tubes in some ways, twisting and turning like pieces of DNA. It's a good way to begin. Okay. I think that's an excellent exercise. The body usually feels much lighter and open and loose after you work with that. It helps promote that sense of awareness of the spine, all the way from the tip of the tailbone up to the top of the head. Another good thing to do along with this particular exercise is to take your hands and rub the skin on top of the cranium, on top of the scalp. Take the scalp and rub it on top of the bones of the skin around the top of the cranium. Now, it isn't scratching. This is actually rubbing the skin around the top of the cranium. You notice when you do that, let's say you do this motion. You rub it around, Go one way and go the other way. You can feel like your fingers are rubbing right above the base of the spine. And the base of the spine is going right into the rib cage. And then going right down to the tailbone. And pointing right down to the center of the earth. I don't mean in the sense of any kind of mystical expression. This is exactly what it's doing. So you can just take advantage of paying attention to what it's really doing. And then you can, if you would like, you can use your imagination and feel like your hand is actually warming and awakening the brain right underneath the fingers. You know, the brain itself is probably only a quarter of an inch underneath those fingertips right now. Right there. So think about that for a second. The top of the head, the hemispheres of the brain, the midbrain, the roof of the mouth, the tongue, vocal cords, the bottom of the mouth, the lower jaw, brain stem coming down behind the neck, down between the shoulder blades, down past the heart, down past the stomach, down past the intestines, down in between the hips, the legs coming out of the hips on both sides, down to the knees, down into the ankles, the feet, the toes inside the feet, the bones inside the feet, pouring out from the ankles, caressing the ground below them. Everything firm, everything communicating, everything loose, everything open, nothing held. Everything spontaneously coming up as you allow your feet to go down. And you'll notice after you do that, first of all, several things are at the top of the head like that. One is your balance improves immediately. You walk more erect. You have a tendency, as Feldenkrais would say, or as I would say about what Feldenkrais has done, if your head knows where it's at, then it knows which direction to be in. The head knows it's supposed to be pointing to the sky, in the same way the feet knows they're supposed to be pointing towards the ground. So when the head knows its location, when you've created a feedback to it, you know where the top of the head is at, it instinctively knows how to be and how to line itself up, and will increase in its appropriate structure immediately. And you'll be able to feel that experientially the next moment. So if you walk around the room now after that, you'll notice that your head feels like it's in a new position now, slightly different than it was in relationship to the shoulder, collarbones, and neck than it was earlier.
Okay.
When things are in complete balance throughout the body, or more or less in balance, then a certain kind of containment happens in the brain when you're not threatened but yet you have the energetic quality of being interested. Mm-hmm. So when you bring an element of energy and containment together, as opposed to being passive, then that brings I'm sure this is a very fine edge, and I don't think there's anyone who knows particularly how to bring this about, even though there may be some individuals who have this knack. movement of energy and containment together, as opposed to being passive. Then that brings there, I'm sure this is a very fine edge, and I don't think there's anyone who knows particularly how to bring this about, even though there may be some individuals who have this knack.
But I get a feeling that this is somehow related to the depth of the Tai Chi experience.
Well, I think that there is the Tai Chi, one of the aspects of Tai Chi is to bring about an overall awareness, and I think that in a balancing of the different parts of the body from the extremities in the inside out, especially in balancing of the internal organs. The diaphragms at the base of the pelvis and the top of the head, and the diaphragms at the bottom of the rib cage. Those, like when they're too tense or too lax, depending upon the condition, create a sense of imbalance throughout the body, and something that's very difficult to correct through any kind of willful measure, but something that can be brought into some sense of harmony by a long-standing effort in the same direction.
So that maybe becomes a part of a negative feedback cycle if one is not aware of that, but the body is.
Oh, absolutely. This is like, there's no doubt that pulling up out of the pelvis and holding the breath and feeling pressure in the head are signs of a startle reflex that pushes throughout the body and causes the body to feel itself on alert. And by doing so, when the body's on alert, there's a immediate cutting down of information. The amount of information that's allowed in is limited because it's such an ancient aspect to it. People have problems with their hips, working with their legs. The legs feel heavy and lethargic. They've lost their swing in their hips when they walk. One of the problems with that is the fact that our balance is not very clear, and we tighten up around the hips to hold ourselves still because we're not giving in appropriately and allowing shifting to happen. One way to approach this is to think in terms of the actual process of how we learn how to walk and how we preliminarily learn how to crawl before that. When a baby is learning to crawl, it often first will learn how to crawl monolaterally, where the same side motion comes forward. So they'll be doing this way. Of course, my knees are on, I'm going to protect my pants. My knees are on the ground like this. And they crawl side to side. They move side to side to begin with. And then after they've mastered the side-to-side motion, then they begin doing the bilateral motion. Now the side-to-side motion is a preparation for walking in the sense that when you walk, you shift your weight over to one side and then lift the leg. And then when you step, you shift the weight up to that spot and then you lift over. And this happens so minutely when you're normally walking that it slides by your awareness. But there's a moment in which it shifts and the pelvis swings forward as it rides on the hip there. So, like in the Tai Chi I've showed you before, part of that, Tai Chi is considered a walking exercise. So a good way to practice this is to go back and think in terms of how we constructed our walking to begin with. And I do what I call the monolateral walking. It's where you stand, you shift your weight to one side, and you lift the elbow and the leg. You step down, shift the weight forward, establish your balance, lift this side, step down, establish your balance, don't raise up, shift over and down.
That does look like Tai Chi.
Right, it's the basis of some of the Tai Chi motions. Motion of parting the wild horse's mane and brush knee twist step is centered around this particular motion. And then like shift the weight back. Now if you find yourself wobbling at the top, concentrate on the elbow and the knee. Don't concentrate on the leg that's holding you up. Concentrate on the other leg. And you'll find that it works, that will cause a shift and it will allow you to be very stable. So monolateral walking, after you've done a few steps of this, you just stop for a second and notice how you feel. It feels like now that your body is wider than it was, that your stance has opened up. Is that we have a tendency to contract and pull in around the core of ourself. As we become aware of ourselves more in the periphery and allow ourselves to be and open up to life, then we allow ourselves to spread in the middle and open up. We feel a broad base. He had a broad stance. That doesn't mean necessarily to stand like this, because that is actually a constriction of the hips. It means to have the legs below the hips, have a feeling of width and stability. Monolateral walking, monolateral crawling are things that can have a powerful effect upon your balance and your sense of well-being.
It's not paradoxical, because if the body is on alert, it seems that it would be set for more information. But do you mean bodily feedback? Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean the idea that you, when you go on alert, you begin to select out specific information.
Oh, okay. Just
so
certain things you're...
certain things you're looking for, desperate things.
Okay.
You're looking for survival mechanisms begin to pull into play. Not many people are involved in finer information or subtler levels of information, intuition, at the moment that someone pulls a gun on them, let's say.
Right.
Even though there are some interesting qualities of those kinds of extremely startling events that throw us into non-time and different kinds of time distortions, which have some very curious qualities about them, oftentimes can give us maybe a sense of direction of what life could be other in more normal situations.
Now, it may be a time for you to say a word about non-time, since I have a feeling for what you mean, but the viewers may not.
Well, there has been, let me think, there has been a lot of talk about the hemispheric and right brain, left brain, and right brain being somewhat non-time or artistic time or lack of any sense of progression.
Is it like timeless?
Timeless. Now, I think there are many degradations of this kind of thing. I think a true near-death experience, let's say, even though there's a lot of debate yet on exactly what's happening there. I mean, there's a whole, from one hand, there's people saying that this is a genuine experience of the religious structure of the universe and the religious structure of life, and then on the other hand, there are people saying, well, this is a natural mechanism of a hormonal balance changing and the different kinds of chemical changes in the brain producing a special kind of environment. So these two polarities to try to describe this irresolvable situation, regardless of how we would try to pigeonhole it, the actual experience for the individual oftentimes includes a sense of timelessness, a sense of non-time, oftentimes, of being in a terrain in which, like, they are not governed by three-dimensional reality and three-dimensional space.